Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Huge update on the roster mania side after all the rumours the last few days about OpTic Pred and OpTic Arcitys. Either those moves were never going to happen at all, or they have simply fallen through, and OpTic arguably now are in disarray trying to round out their roster going into the new year. Will they actually find some other options, or will they have to run it back again for the second time in a matter of months? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Again, well over 500 subs in the last few days. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Let's keep on going, baby, into the 90k. We're not too far away. Let's dive into things. So Pred, first of all, stay tuned, he says. Very interesting caption with the timing. This is based on the Thunder from Down Under video series that he's going to be doing for this entire season. Maybe one of the reasons why he would prefer to stay on the Seattle Surge and round out his year on that camp if he does, and we'll see one of the reasons behind that here in a second. So the last few days, all the rumours have been around this roster. Initially, it came around the OpTic Arcitys stuff, then around the OpTic Pred stuff. And look, back when Crone CDL Intel was doing this reporting in Call of Duty, when he said something, it was almost always going to happen. He wouldn't really say stuff, and still the pen was almost at the paper. Jacob Hale does a similar thing at Deserto. Different reporters have different ideas of this, and look, Ronnie at CDL Scum Intel definitely has his sources, but when he says stuff, it's got to be taken with a bit of a grain of salt, because it can never be guaranteed. He says things rather early on in the life cycle. So when these rumours were coming out about Arcitys and Pred, I was like, okay, let me just leave it 12 hours, see what happens, see what Zuma's reaction is, see what Benjay Nassim's reaction is, and based on that, then I'll talk about it. And I feel a bit bad talking about this maybe as if it had a higher percentage chance to happen than it actually seemingly does have, but based on the reactions of Zuma and Ben, I thought, okay, there's enough behind this to kind of run with the story. And of course, everyone in the scene has been talking about it the last couple of days. Turns out that while I'm pretty sure that this Arcitys and Pred thing, it's definitely got some basis in reality. The rumor seems to be, and I even said yesterday, that probably the Arcitys thing may or may not happen, but the Pred thing seems more likely than not to kind of be on the fence last night, just because it seemed like OpTic wanted Pred, but whether there was actually any reciprocation from the other side was up in the air. So there might well be some truth behind this Arcitys and Pred stuff, and it might well be that OpTic wanted those players rather than the teams that those players are on, or even the players themselves actually wanted to go the other way. Even Arcitys has been kind of baiting about this the last couple of days on stream. The interesting thing about Arcitys and LAG though is that we got a new roster for LAG leaked yesterday, and a couple of different sources suggesting that it was going to be with Assaults there and not Arcitys. So that kind of implies that Arcitys is gone, but now maybe he's back after all. So it's an absolutely chaotic situation. Also to mention this, right, because there was some graphic designer made this welcome Pred graphic and then leaked it on Discord to try and get it to stir around, right, as if this is actually legitimate, but you know, this graphic was fake and made and all this type of stuff. So everyone was jumping on board the bandwagon here, and it seemed to make an awful lot of sense. From the OpTic side, now does it make any sense from Seattle side? Not really, unless they wanted to sell Pred now and get money for him before the end of the season, where technically he could just walk to OpTic anyway, but maybe Pred doesn't want to go that route. So Riley Fowler here says OpTic, echoing what Hunter says from the guards, that, you know, nobody really knows what's going on there behind the scenes, and the things that are coming out on the surface aren't what's actually happening behind closed doors. And there isn't really that much time. I mean, think about it. The second major begins on, I think, the 2nd of February. There are 3 weekends of qualification matches before then, so it's very early January, really, where the matches start again for Major 2. There isn't really that long after Christmas tomorrow to get all this sorted out. So then Ronnie comes out and says that his latest update is that he's hearing things that Arcitys is going to stay on LAG, no idea on Pred, and then shortly afterwards, Crone comes out and says the following: a lot of misinformation and premature roster changes being discussed over the last few days. To my understanding, both Arcitys and Pred are staying with their respective teams, and the deal for either of the two was not close to being done. So there might have been a deal involved, but it was, you know, nowhere near close to actually happening, and therefore these deals are now effectively off the table and will not be going through. Whether that's instigated by the teams themselves, whether LAG have said, well, Arcitys on a 3-year deal, like that's not going to happen, or whether Arcitys, or let's say Pred especially, has said, you know what, I'd actually prefer to stay on Seattle. Maybe that is the case for Pred. If Pred wants to go to OpTic, he probably can at the end of the season. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. OpTic will be needing a player to replace Scump. It almost feels like Pred can go there whenever he likes, depending on what the situation is. And they just came second at the event, right? I actually said that after Seattle came second at the event, I was like, okay, this is bad news for OpTic, because, you know, that team probably won't make any changes. And it's also bad news for Dashy and even iLLeY, because now some of the teams that they could have gone to, if the team is still making a change, are now off the table, right? If Seattle aren't making a move, if LAG aren't making as many moves, then that shuts down some of their opportunities as well. So look, obviously Crone, it'd be nice if he came back full time to do this type of stuff. He's got one more in him, but now it seems like he is officially done, and he went on to kind of clarify this and said, look, Ronnie's going to get cooked for this, but he does have some sources. Just seems like he pre-fired too early out of excitement. I even heard some Fugates on the flank yesterday, but at the end of the day, those guys are there to entertain, etc., etc. So look, Crone's like, look, have multiple sources before you report this type of stuff, but it's still, remarkable state of affairs. And even he talks about Ben, right, because Ben made a couple of videos on this, and he was saying that Arcitys had kind of heard that that was relatively close, but it's all a bit subjective, really. Like, what is close to being done for Ben is different potentially to what is close to getting done for Crone. So anyway, the fact of the matter is, the long and the short of it is that either the RCs and the Pred deals were never going to happen at all, or they're effectively not going through now. So where does this leave OpTic? First of all, it's an absolute disaster, because I don't think that OpTic are just baiting around here. After what happened in the summer, it would just be mind-blowing to me if OpTic all this time would just been like, oh yeah, we're just trolling, guys, we're going to run it back for the new year. It's like, well, if you're trolling around and you get top 12 and you go into a pretty tough set of qualifiers and have a bad time, it's not going well. And based on what Dashy said on stream that we talked about yesterday, wanting to get his, not exactly wanting to get his revenge, but, needing to play, wanting to get back involved, talking about being jobless and all this. Okay, maybe he was laughing and joking around a little bit, but, nonetheless, it felt like the Dashy was probably gone. And also, why would Dashy do those tweets that he did the other day if they're actually just joking? Like, what is there to be gained from the OpTic side by joking around about this type of stuff again? So I really do feel like Dashy is probably gone. I don't know if that kind of personal issues that they've had externally from the game the last couple of years can now be resolved. But, the issue is, if you can't get any good replacements in those roles, then do you say, look, Dashy, please come back, we apologize? But that surely is never going to work out well. And just to mention also, there were some rumors about the whole Los Angeles Guerrillas side, the fact that Assault was going to be their AR and not Arcitys. So maybe that deal was a little bit closer and now has fallen through for whatever reason. But as Jacob L says, right, if every roster just runs it back for the new year, the vibes are going to be absolutely chalked on so many of these teams. And that's the thing, if OpTic were just baiting around, why would Dashy change his name from OpTic Dashy to Brandon? Why would he do this tweet? Why would he effectively say goodbye to Formal on Twitter? It doesn't really, I don't really know what is there to be gained, okay? Maybe they're just baiting for impressions, fair enough. But I just don't really see that as viable. I feel like OpTic did want to make a change. These leaks aren't just coming out of thin air, because if they were, I'm sure that Zuma and Ben wouldn't have kind of followed through with the discussions on them as they have done the last couple of days. So there must be something behind this. But the issue is for OpTic is that, look, it's an absolute disaster class. I don't know that people are going to, come knocking at Scump's door, right? Because at the end of the day, Scump was the man his final season who probably made the call to say, you know what, let's run it back for one more year. And that call has obviously backfired massively over the first couple of months. And the issue is now that there aren't many changes to be made. The changes they want to make won't happen because contracts and maybe players don't want to do it, because can't really blame them at the same time as well. OpTic haven't been looking so good as an outfit the last couple of seasons. And even just to mention this, some of you guys are mentioning that iLLeY, at the same time that Dashy changed his name from OpTic Dashy to Brandon, iLLeY put whatever it takes in his bio here, which is brand new over the last couple of days. Also potentially implying that, yeah, he's kind of coming on the revenge tour as he was planning to after he got dropped in the offseason and then was brought back. So what is the case now for OpTic? Obviously, you can talk about whose fault this all is and the absolute shambles that's been the case at OpTic for the last 12 months, really. But now what's going to happen? Because this happened back in World War II with OpTic. They wanted to make the change with the Dynasty type stuff. They wanted Zuma, they wanted John, they wanted an SMG player. They couldn't get one for contracts, and FaZe offered Zuma like 20k a month or something crazy. So they had to settle for a couple of ARs. They brought Octane in, they brought Methods in. They were always going to get Octane that season, but they brought Methods in instead because they simply couldn't get anyone else. And in fairness, this team with Scump and Crimsix plus these two was incredibly good at hardpoint that year, but of course had the pretty infamous top 24 placing at the World Championship. So what do OpTic do now? Dave Paddy is an option, breaking the curse, bring this guy in. They need a main AR. Can they possibly convince Dashy to return? Do they even want to, right, at the end of the day? Like, if Dashy's looking at other teams, if Dashy's saying, you know what, like, I've had enough of this, and maybe they've had enough of him as well, is there any way that happens again? Has iLLeY actually been dropped? Because it feels like Dashy has. We haven't heard the same things from iLLeY as well, or maybe iLLeY manages to survive these changes, or maybe iLLeY even steps into the main AR role and they do something else. Because, look, if I'm OpTic and I can't get Arcitys and I can't get Pred, this is what I consider doing. You're not going to get someone from FaZe, that's not going to happen, unless that crazy Cellium rumor actually has any weight, but I doubt that at all, and we'll discuss that later today. The Boston team, maybe, like, okay, maybe someone like Vivid could be nice, just because Vivid and Shotzzy were a great duo at the end of the Cold War season, but, Boston going to let that happen? Probably not. Do you want anyone from Florida? Probably not. Same with Vegas, unless you want to try and get Clay, which would be an unbelievable timeline, but I doubt that's going to happen. Already anyone else on the SMG line there seems unlucky, unless they want to get Proloot back, which I don't really see as being particularly viable either. Then you get to London and LAG. So if they're not getting Arcitys from LAG, one option maybe is Huke, right? Just because the OpTic guys have considered playing with Huke in the past. I'm sure they'd still rate him highly. Huke plus Shotzzy as an SMG duo. I still want to see Scump move to the flex here and to bring in an SMG alongside Shotzzy and make that work as the SMG combo and then figure out the AR later maybe. So Huke is maybe an outside possibility if LAG are willing to do that potentially, which they probably would be more so than the Arcitys move. And then the other player that I'm looking at is aBeZy, because aBeZy from the London side, he was actually linked to be joining Surge if Pred was going to OpTic. Now if Pred isn't going to OpTic, then aBeZy might be available. And we even talked back in Cold War, there was a video I did, I remember it, and I'm pretty sure it's on the thumbnail, OpTic need an aBeZy, because that was the discussion at the time, that OpTic were missing an aBeZy-like player, someone to fill the gaps. And also aBeZy brings so much, I think, to a team in terms of not just he's looking great at the start of this title, but also in terms of chemistry, in terms of leadership, in terms of, you know, keeping the players' heads up when it matters. He's like, he has so many good attributes as a teammate that I do feel like OpTic have been lacking the last couple of years. If aBeZy came into the OpTic camp, I'm sure it would change their mentality for the better, absolutely convinced of it. Now, whether aBeZy, in terms of his inconsistency, especially towards the end of titles, is the best partner for Shotzzy, like, look, if you can get Pred, you obviously get Pred, but if you can't get Pred, and you want to potentially put Scump to the flex and bring in an SMG, aBeZy, if you can get him, I think he should be top of list, maybe up there with Huke. You're not going to get anyone from Thieves, you're not going to get anyone from Rokkr, not going to get anyone from New York, and then, you know, Seattle probably not changing, in the same story with Toronto. So there are limited options. The only other option that they have maybe is to look down into challengers. There are the options of Beans, right, of course, for the Boston substitute bench, Wardy as well from the New York substitute bench, but I mean, look, has Scump even heard of these players? I don't really know. Would they make a move like that? I doubt it. Capsule was trying, in fairness, at the major, the kind of challenger side, but yeah, that seems doubtful as well. So without Arcitys, without Pred, what do you do? Maybe you ask the guys to come back, but if that happens, it's an absolute disaster class. Maybe you get Damon Carmabalo to come back, but like, surely that can't be the case, although he did turn down an offer from the Vegas Legion guys, and maybe they would say, you know what, please Karma, let's make it happen, because we're running out of options at this point and are on very thin ice. Like, look, I doubt the whole Crimsix idea is going to happen either, but I mean, yeah, what do you guys expect to happen here? Because if Pred has fallen through, there might be some other options there. If Arcitys has fallen through, as it seems like he has, then what do you do from an AR side? There aren't really any ARs that should be an option there, unless Scump is like, look, methods, please make the return, but I kind of doubt that's going to be happening. And well, if that doesn't happen, then what do they do? Does iLLeY stay and run a main AR? Like, is that a possibility? Maybe it is, because maybe you get iLLeY to play like the accuracy role, but you know, does that work so well if you don't have an absolutely star-studded team like all across the borders in the SMG line? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. OpTic, to me, going into Christmas, seem like they're in a bit of a shambles right now. They could try and get the old team back, maybe. You know, even people have been mentioning the possibility of what if Scump says, you know what, I've had enough of this, get me out of here, and you know, called it a day early. I don't think Scump's gonna, you know, announce on January the 1st that he's just done and dusted already, but there is maybe a chance that if OpTic are forced to run it back going into the new year, that Scump after Major 2, Major 3 is like, well, you know, we're absolutely shambolic state right now, we can't get anywhere we want, like, you know, maybe just call it a day early. I don't know, I hope that doesn't happen, of course, but nonetheless, it's not a pretty situation right now for OpTic going into Christmas. So, I don't know what's happened there the last few days, but it's obviously not been a good situation, and we'll have to stay tuned for what happens after Christmas. Tomorrow, I may do a video, may not, we'll see what happens. I usually take Christmas off and do like a pre-recorded video, but right now, like, this is the most things that have ever happened really around the Christmas period, so, you know, maybe there'll be a video that arrives regardless, that's made based on things that happened today, but very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.